Welcome back, friends. Tonight we journey deep into the dim-lit alleyways of Imperial Beijing, where shadows flicker under lanterns and footsteps echo in the cold hush before dawn. You probably think your early morning commute is rough, but you haven't tried dragging your half-frozen body out of a straw mat to bang a brass gong in the name of public order, while the whole city dreams warm and safe behind closed wooden doors. You're a night watch gong beater, and it's the Ming Dynasty. Your job, simple on paper, mark the passage of time every couple of hours by sounding your gong and announcing the hour. Reality, far messier, colder, louder, and way more urine-slick than you'd expect. And just to keep it spicy, one slip-up could result in a whipping from your superior. Or worse, an imperial rebuke, which you definitely don't want on your resume. So, before you get too comfortable, hit like and subscribe, but only if I've earned it. No pressure, no hard feelings, and if you're tuning in from somewhere far away or just can't sleep, drop your city and local time in the comments. You're not alone out there. Now go ahead and dim the lights, maybe curl up with a blanket, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up before the sun even thinks about rising. There's no alarm clock, of course, just your neighbour shouting at his chickens and the slow hiss of charcoal heating up in a brazier across the alley. You don't stretch, you don't yawn. You just exist in that moment of aching joints and stiff fingers. Your uniform, wool-lined, patched too many times, is still damp from last night's rain. Your gong leans against the doorframe. It's about the size of a dinner plate, bronze and chipped at the edge. You carry it with a worn leather strap slung over your shoulder. It smells faintly like smoke and old brass. It's your best friend and worst enemy. Tonight it feels heavier than usual. Or maybe your arms are just sore from yesterday's route. You shuffle outside, your boots sticking slightly to the frost-dusted street. The moon is a crooked sliver, not doing you any favours in terms of visibility. Somewhere down the alley a dog barks, probably at you, or a spirit. Or another dog barking back. Hard to say. You lift your mallet and tap the gong gently, letting out a low, resonant thong. There it is. That sound. That's your job. Tonight you're covering a long shift, starting with the second watch at 9 p.m. and going all the way through till dawn, a full route. The Ming night is divided into 5 geng, each about 2 hours. You and the others rotate, but tonight you're the one starting when the city's finally winding down, right when people start getting superstitious. The Ming capital is vast. At night, the inner city is quiet except for the occasional rickshaw creak, or the slosh of chamber pots being dumped. Lovely. You start your round, tapping the gong at intervals. As you pass intersections, you call out the hour and status. Second watch. All's well. A phrase repeated so often it starts to lose meaning by the 50th time. Your voice echoes off the stone walls and tiled roofs. You wonder who hears it. A scholar hunched over his books? A concubine sneaking to her lover's home? A thief paused mid-climb on a rooftop waiting to hear where you are before making his move. The streets are technically under curfew, but enforcement's spotty. You keep your eyes open. Not that you'll stop a crime. You've got no sword, no authority. You're just a gong beater. Your power lies in being predictable. You're a walking clock with lungs. Historians still argue whether the gong beaters actually helped reduce crime, or just made it easier for thieves to time their break-ins. At one corner you pass an old tea shop shuttered tight. Last week the owner bribed you with 2 bao buns to shout an extra loud "All's well" outside his shop, to deter vandals. You did it, and sure enough, the place wasn't touched. He still owes you pickled ginger though. It's cold, not brisk autumn morning cold, knife between the ribs cold, the kind that bites under your clothes and makes your nose run then freeze. You keep walking because stopping means stiffening up. Your breath curls in front of your face. You try not to look too long into alleyways because sometimes you do see things. There's an urban legend among gong beaters about a 6th shift, the ghost watch. A pale figure with no face, carrying a broken bell, seen only on lunar eclipse nights. You don't believe in it. Probably. But still, when you hear footsteps that don't echo right, your pace quickens. You remember the story old Yuan told, a gong beater from the southern quarter. He once stopped to relieve himself behind a shrine and heard his own gong echo back before he struck it. that was the last night he ever worked. You pass 2 more intersections, then turn into a narrow path near the canal. The stench hits you immediately. Fish, rot, something worse. You swallow it down like a bad memory. The gong hangs heavy against your hip. You strike again. Thong. A low, steady tone. You don't shout this time. The walls here bounce sound in weird ways, and last month your yell caused someone's pottery shelf to collapse. She still glares at you when you walk by. At your halfway point, you rest by an incense burner set into the wall of a minor temple. The smoke is faint, sweet, calming. You warm your hands near the small braziers. A rat skitters past, not even afraid anymore. There's a scroll pasted on the temple wall, something about balance, time, and ancestors watching over the city. You squint at it, trying to keep your eyes open. Your body begs for sleep, but your shift's only halfway done. You whisper the next, "All's well," this time more to yourself than anyone else. And then, crack. A sound behind you. You whirl around, mallet raised, heart racing. Just a cat knocked over a bucket. Of course. You laugh, softly. The cat stares, unimpressed, before slinking off. You think you hear it mutter "amateur," but maybe that's just the exhaustion talking. You take 1 more breath of incense-sweet air, then hoist the gong again. Time to keep moving. The city still dreams, and you're the one tasked with keeping the night on schedule, 1 strike at a time. Your boots leave barely a sound now. The frost has thickened into a thin sheet of ice over the cobbles, and your soles don't so much step as slide. Still, your balance is solid. After all, you've walked these same winding alleys every other night for 3 years. You could probably trace the route blindfolded if the gods ever decided to test you that way. Let's not give them ideas. Tonight, your main concern isn't spirits or slipping, though. It's timing. Timing is everything. You pass the first marker on your route, a painted red line halfway up a wall beside a sagging wooden door. That's your cue for the second strike. You tap the gong again, thong, then pause, listening carefully. You wait for the echo to return from the opposite side of the alley, just a heartbeat after. There it is. 1 full breath, late. That means humidity's up. Echoes travel differently when the air is thick. You make a mental note to adjust your pacing accordingly. No clocks, remember? Just air and instinct. Back at training, which sounds grander than it was, they told you to count footsteps between checkpoints, use the drips of your oil lamp, or mark time by how quickly the wax on your candle burns. That last one, of course, assumes you can afford a fresh candle every few nights. You cannot. You've been using the same stubby chunk of wax for a week now, and it's developed a disturbing lean. Last night it dripped on your shoe. Still smells like burnt wool. Some say the Imperial timekeepers use star charts to calculate shifts, your trainer once said. You get candle stubs and a sense of rhythm. Try not to mess it up. That rhythm, step, step, pause, gong, is your pulse now. You repeat it endlessly, like a song you can't shake. The entire city relies on people like you to know when midnight comes and when dawn approaches. Not that they thank you for it. Most folks don't even realise their peaceful sleep depends on your steady beat, like some ghostly metronome walking their dreams. You reach the second checkpoint. Beneath the paper lantern outside the apothecary, you strike again and whisper the update. Second watch, all's well. You keep it soft here. The apothecary's son is sick and his mother sleeps just inside. She once gave you plum wine when you slipped and bloodied your knee on a delivery cart. You try to walk quieter here. You do a quick inventory of your supplies. Mallet, still intact, wrapped with cloth to muffle the sharpest tones. Gong, cracked at the rim, but still sings. Candlestick, listing. Oil flask, half full. A pouch of dried peas for snacking and 1 small string of coins you're saving for a lucky charm. Maybe a jade piece to keep evil spirits off your back. You pass the stone bridge and pause at the centre. The canal water is still tonight. No breeze. You strike the gong, listening for the echo off the water. Instead, a bullfrog responds. A debate still circles among historians about the use of sound mapping in Ming-era watch routes. Some believe gong beaters like you developed informal echo charts, knowing which corners bounced sound best and which streets swallowed noise whole. Others think that's just a romantic notion, dreamt up by people who've never tried to shout over a drunken noodle vendor. You lean toward the first theory. Sound is your compass. The third checkpoint is past the market square. Empty now, but still littered with cabbage leaves and yesterday's grime. You tiptoe around a pile of something vaguely organic and avoid a half-eaten dumpling that's turned the colour of regret. The wind picks up slightly, and your candle sputters. You shield it with one hand, walking faster now. You don't want to relight it. The flint and tinder always give you trouble, and last time your spark singed your eyebrow. You still have the smell of burnt hair locked in your nose whenever you lean over an open flame. You duck under an awning and strike again. This one echoes off a shop sign with a metallic boing, almost comical. You grin. You needed that. As you move on, you think of the old gong beater whose route you inherited. Master Zhen, the silent legend. He was said to never miss a beat, never stumble, never speak out of turn. When he retired, or vanished, depending on who you ask, you were handed his route. Big footsteps to fill. You still use his map, creased 100 times and smudged with what you hope is only ink. Somewhere ahead, the wind carries the smell of night jasmine. You slow your pace. The air's sweet for a moment, the silence gentler. Then you hear it, the distant clatter of wood on stone. Another gong beater, on a parallel route. You pause and count. 2 strikes. They're behind schedule. You knock the gong once, harder this time, in case they're listening. A way of saying, keep up. Maybe it's Jiang from the west route. He's always lagging, blames it on a limp that seems to switch legs depending on who's watching. You reach the next checkpoint, an alley shrine carved into a wall. You bow slightly, a habit. Not religious, just cautious. The incense ash here is 3 inches thick. A rat skitters over your boot. You don't flinch anymore. There's a tiny stone turtle nestled in the base of the shrine, half hidden. It's said if you whisper a wish into its shell, it'll carry the request to the underworld. You once wished for warmer shoes. Didn't work. You move on, past the empty stables, the groaning bamboo gate, the house where someone sings off-key lullabies every single night. You know the route by sound more than sight. Each house has a song. Each alley has a voice. You pass the weaver's district. Tiny looms you can hear ticking behind thin walls. Even now, someone works late, maybe trying to meet a deadline for a noble's robe. You admire that. Night people recognise each other, even in silence. You strike your gong again. The sound bounces against shutters and clay pots, then vanishes. You're starting to feel the ache now, in your thighs, your back, your right foot. You pause and stretch your arms, feel the cold crackle in your joints. Almost done with this round. Almost. At the final checkpoint for this hour, you find a gift. A small rice ball left neatly on a piece of cloth atop the step. No note, no explanation. Just kindness, anonymous and silent. You eat it slowly, grateful. It's still warm. The next hour settles in like a damp blanket, soft, slow, and heavy in your bones. Your breath no longer comes in clouds. It just hangs there, still. The air is still. You pass under a row of latticed balconies. Shadows twist above you, laundry left too long, swaying like sleeping ghosts. Not that you believe in ghosts. Probably. Still, you give the clothesline a wide berth, just in case one of those long sleeves suddenly reaches down. The street narrows. This part of your route is older, more cracked. The kind of place people pretend not to live in, where windows stay shuttered even in summer, and you only ever see the back of someone's head as they disappear through a door. This is where things get interesting. You give your gong a soft strike. The sound flutters up the alley like a moth, almost delicate. Then, somewhere off to the left, a noise, quick, sharp, like someone slipping on a stone. You freeze, heart thudding. Could be a drunk, could be a dog, could be the beginning of your own crime story. You grip the mallet tighter, step slow, turn your head without moving your feet, and then 2 alley cats burst into the open, hissing and locked in a death match over a fish skeleton. They care nothing for you, your job, or your mortal fear. They vanish again into the shadows, leaving a single fisheye rolling gently across the cobblestone. You breathe again, barely, but you keep your guard up. This part of town has its reputation. You're not armed. You're not trained. If something does go sideways, your options are limited to running or yelling really loud and hoping a neighbour is awake enough to care. That said, you do carry a whistle. It's carved bone, shaped like a bird. Supposed to alert the nearest patrol, you tested it once. A rat appeared. So, marginal success. Further down the alley, you approach the bend known among gong beaters as Whisper Corner. There's a crack in the bricks where wind always finds a way through, and it sounds just enough like someone murmuring to make your skin crawl. Doesn't matter how many times you pass, it always sounds like your name being whispered just out of reach. You speed up without meaning to. You all do. There's another urban tale about this place. They say a thief once hid here from the guards, clutching a stolen peach and refusing to drop it. He starved to death rather than let go. Some say you can still hear him chewing. You've never heard it yourself, but then you're careful about where you buy peaches. You round the corner and strike your gong again, louder this time, for reassurance, for rhythm, for spite. This section of the city has its own brand of problems. Less grand theft silk, more suspicious meetings behind grain sheds. You spot one now, 2 figures hunched beneath a balcony whispering urgently, "You don't stop, don't stare, not your job." You strike the gong and shout your line, "Third watch, all's well." One of the figures flinches, the other tilts his head, nods once. You keep walking, eyes forward. You've learned not to listen too hard when people are trying not to be heard. Historians still argue whether gong beaters ever served as informants for the Imperial Security Network. You're not one, as far as you know, but if you were, would you even be allowed to remember? The silence after you pass is thick, tense, but then you hear something truly eerie, laughter, a child's laugh, short and bright from somewhere high above. You look up, nothing but dark windows and the faint smell of boiled cabbage. Okay, that's enough of this block for tonight. You move on, grateful to reach a more open street. This one's lined with old stone lanterns, unlit now but tall and solid. You like this street. Fewer shadows. The sound carries better too. You strike the gong, and it echoes clean and full. A satisfying note. Like a job well done, even if the job is walking in circles with a noisemaker at 2 a.m. You pause under the largest lantern. There's a wooden bench here, warped by years of rain, but still sturdy enough to lean against. You allow yourself 20 seconds. No more. Just long enough to roll your shoulders, ease the weight of the gong strap, stretch your neck. The bench smells like mould and pine. You like it. Then, the footsteps. Not yours, not fast, not heavy, just steady. Someone walking the opposite direction. You freeze again, eyes narrowed. A shadow appears from the far end of the street. Hooded, maybe. Cloaked. You can't tell. They don't speak. Don't flinch at your presence. Just walk past. Silent. You try to catch a glimpse of their face. Nothing. No light. No sound. You strike your gong again, louder than necessary. The sound scatters pigeons from a rooftop. You walk faster. You cut through the back end of the artisan's quarter next. Leatherworkers, carpenters, the occasional brush painter still bent over his scroll. You can smell lacquer and glue. Sawdust clings to the soles of your boots. A fringe tradition here. Some families hang protective charms from their doorframes. Bells, feathers, even carved eyes. One has a doll head mounted above the lintel. You nod politely to it. It does not nod back. Probably. You think about your own home. A shared room with 3 others in the watchman's dormitory. Your bunk's the top one, beneath the rafter with the loose tile. You've stuffed it with straw. Not very effective, but it blocks the worst of the leaks. You've got a pillow now. Found it last month. Discarded near the river. Smells like fish, but hey, support's support. You strike the gong again. Almost time to circle back to your first checkpoint. The city hasn't changed. Still asleep. Still waiting for morning. Still relying on you not to vanish into the shadows like Master Jen. You wonder, sometimes, if anyone would notice if you did. If you stopped walking. If the gongs fell silent. Maybe the night would just stretch on forever. You're shaken from that thought by a sudden screech. High-pitched, grating. An alley cat? That's a window shutter above you, torn loose in the wind. It slams open, then hangs there, banging lightly against the wall. You exhale, tension draining out of your shoulders. You need a nap, or a vacation, or reincarnation. Your feet find the cobblestones with dull familiarity now. The rhythm has become muscle memory, one that aches, admittedly, but it's yours. You step over a splintered plank bridge that creaks like a gossip, glancing at the moon's sliver again. Still there, still indifferent. You round into a quiet corridor flanked by mud brick walls and bamboo fencing. This is one of your rest stops. Not officially sanctioned, of course, but every gong beater has a few such hideaways. This one's yours because of the pickle barrel. There's a small courtyard here, nestled between a defunct tailor shop and an abandoned storage hut. At the far end, tucked in the shadows, is a battered crate that serves as a bench. Nearby, a narrow storage alcove with a lid warped by sun and time houses the prize, a ceramic jar of pickled turnips, slightly sour, mildly spicy, mysteriously self-replenishing. You don't ask questions. You take a seat, groaning softly as your knees bend, the gong sliding off your shoulder with a soft clink. The turnip jar gives off a sharp, vinegary scent that's weirdly comforting, sort of like your childhood if it had more fermentation. Crunch. You bite into one of the pickles, letting the brine cut through your fatigue. It's salty, with a weird aftertaste that makes your left eye twitch. But hey, it's calories. Kind of. Your break doesn't last long. Across the courtyard, the telltale slap of straw sandals alerts you to company. It's Dung, another night watch like you, older, wider, and with the permanent squint of a man who's either always suspicious or just deeply farsighted. He slumps down beside you with a grunt and pulls out a greasy packet wrapped in cloth. "Sweet potato?" he mumbles, mouth already full. "Don't say I never share." You take a piece. It's cold, mealy, and weirdly comforting. Ding smells like sesame oil and regret. You both chew in silence, the quiet kind shared between men who don't need to talk to understand how much they hate their job. After a while, he nudges your elbow. "You hear about the well?" "Which one?" you ask through another bite of pickled mystery. "The haunted one, over near Carpenter Alley. Girl fell in, pulled out 2 days later. Dry." You pause mid-chew. Dry as in, not a drop. Empty as a rice bowl at tax time. Just her, eyes open, smiling. He grins, revealing a chunk of sweet potato in his molars. "Sleep well tonight." You sigh and take another bite. Haunted wells, shrieking shutters, whispering alleys. It's all just fuel for your subconscious now. Night watch gossip is its own art form, blending half-truths, fever dreams, and just enough reality to keep you twitchy. "Remember the rice spirit story?" you ask, wiping your fingers. "The one with the chicken mask and the rice theft?" "Yeah, that one." He chuckles deep and low. "Still swear I saw it once. Flapping around a courtyard wearing a conical hat. Thief screamed louder than the bird." The two of you laugh, softly, so as not to wake the city. The cold bites less when you laugh. The conversation drifts to other familiar topics. Missing gongs, the best corners to sneak a nap, how your boss smells like boiled cabbage, even when he hasn't eaten cabbage. Standard night shift banter. You talk about a former gong beater who moved south and opened a tofu stand. Apparently he plays the gong for customers when the tofu's ready. Dung rolls his eyes, but you both agree that's still a promotion. Then, like clockwork, the conversation slides into the inevitable. Who got caught sleeping? Last week some poor kid from the North Patrol got found curled behind a rice cart, drooling into his sash. The commander made him patrol barefoot for 3 nights as punishment. He now tiptoes like a cat. Sad cat. As you munch your final turnip slice, you hear a sudden sharp whistle. Not the carved bird one, but a real whistle, thin and quick. Your head snaps up. Dung's already rising. He grumbles and adjusts his sash. Probably drunkards again. Sure enough, just as you peek around the corner, you see 2 young men weaving through the street ahead, one clutching a half-empty wine jug, the other trailing behind, giggling like he's just invented hilarity. They spot you and Dung and freeze. "No trouble," the first one calls, a little too loudly. "Just airing the spirits." You both give a practised nod. It's not your job to arrest, only report. But you do raise the gong and give it a solid strike. Thong. It echoes hard and fast, bouncing off the walls. The drunkards flinch, mutter apologies, and disappear into the night like ghosts with bad balance. You both return to the crate. The break's over, but you linger another moment in that shared space between exhaustion and duty. Then Dung slings his own gong over his shoulder, gives you a 2-finger salute and trudges east. You sigh and stand, joints snapping like firecrackers. You're alone again. As you step back onto your route, your senses feel sharper now. Not rested, just recalibrated. The turnip vinegar may have doubled as smelling salts. You give your gong a lighter tap and begin the next stretch. The night is quieter now. Even the wind has decided to rest. You walk past shuttered tea shops, dusty temples, and one suspiciously ajar door, which you gently nudge shut with your mallet. You cross through a tunnel archway carved with dragons whose eyes seem to follow you. You don't greet them, too tired to be polite to stone. You hit the southern market square again, now utterly still. A paper lantern flaps weakly overhead. A few broken chopsticks crunch beneath your heel. And then, something odd. A faint music. You tilt your head. It's a reed flute, someone playing deep in the alley. You pause, trying to locate the source. It's a slow, sad tune, one you almost recognise. You wonder if it's one of the blind musicians that sometimes travel through at night. Or a ghost. Maybe both. You decide not to investigate. You've made it this far without starring in a folk tale. Historians still argue whether musical traditions in Ming night life played a functional role, warning watchmen of each other's approach, or if it was just a way for the lonely to feel slightly less so. Either way, the tune is soft and oddly comforting. You pass the old kiln where roof tiles are fired. It still radiates a bit of warmth from earlier in the day. You pause just long enough to let your hands hover near the stones. Heat meets cold skin. A tiny mercy. You strike the gong again. It sounds crisper now, as if the metal too got a second wind. You walk on, into another hour. All's well, you murmur. And for now, it really is. You walk on, and the buildings start to change. Not the crumbling shop fronts or soot-smudged dormitories of the poorer districts. No, this is the part of your route that glides a little too close to power. The walls grow taller, smoother. The doors are painted red, heavy with golden studs. Stone lions flank entryways, mouths frozen mid-growl. You're near the outer reaches of the Forbidden City. You don't get closer than the perimeter, of course. No one like you does. You're barely tolerated in the buffer zone, like a useful mosquito that's allowed to buzz as long as it doesn't bite anyone important. Still, your route snakes alongside the walls, through cleaner courtyards and paved paths that never seem muddy, even when it rains. You keep your back straight here, steps quieter. There's something about this place that flattens your humour. Even the gong hangs a bit more politely. This is where things get delicate. See, the imperial household doesn't exactly appreciate noise, but the city still expects you to keep time, which means you're balancing the impossible, striking loud enough to fulfill your duty, but soft enough that your sound doesn't carry into the dreams of nobility. They like their sleep wrapped in silk and silence. Last month, a watchman from another route got summoned for questioning after the Empress Dowager reportedly felt uneasy vibrations in her dreams. He's now patrolling pigsties somewhere west of Nanjing. You stop at your checkpoint under a scholar tree just outside one of the lesser palace gates. You glance up, not at the windows, you've learned not to look, but at the faint silhouette of the roofline. You strike the gong once gently. It hums like a memory, then again. Not too sharp, not too low. You whisper, "Fourth watch." All's well. You think you hear a curtain shift in the distance. You don't wait around. As you move on, the air feels denser. Not physically, spiritually. You know how some temples feel sacred, like the air itself expects reverence. This stretch of street has that same pressure. You walk softer, say less. Even your thoughts quiet down. And yet there's something absurd about this part of your shift. Because while palace life is all ritual and elegance, you're just outside the walls with a crusty candle stub and half a dried radish in your pouch. You're the misfit rhythm keeping the Empire's heartbeat on track. Unseen, unfed, unthanked. You pause at a small shrine dedicated to the kitchen god, placed suspiciously close to the perimeter wall. There's a porcelain dish with the faintest trace of honey on it. You dip your finger in what's left and taste it. Sweet. Probably an offering from one of the palace cooks, asking the kitchen god for favour, or maybe just a quiet night where nothing burns. A gentle breeze picks up, fluttering the fringe on a nearby silk awning. You pass by a storage hall, one of the many unmarked buildings used by palisades and servants. Through the cracked wooden slats you hear it, a stifled laugh. Someone's awake in there, giggling softly. Then, shh, a second voice whispers something. Then, silence. You raise an eyebrow. A tryst, perhaps, or a servant sneaking food. Either way, you pretend you didn't hear. You strike the gong again and continue. Historians still argue whether palace staff sometimes bribed night watchmen to muffle their patrols, especially during illicit rendezvous. Some say that small payments of sesame cakes or plum wine could buy selective deafness. You wouldn't know, probably. A gust of wind kicks up, rattling bamboo blinds and tugging at your sleeves. You pull your coat tighter, resisting the urge to hunch. Posture matters here. You've been told that palace officials sometimes observe the patrols from the shadows, judging discipline by stride. Ridiculous, but you walk straighter anyway. You're coming up on one of the trickier spots, where the acoustics bounce strangely. There's a narrow corridor between two high walls. If you strike too hard, the sound amplifies like a temple bell. If too soft, the echo dies in its cradle. You've practiced this part more than once. You inhale, swing, and thong. Perfect. The sound rolls, full but not booming, just enough to say, I'm here. I'm alert, but not suicidal. You move on with a small sense of satisfaction. Then something rare, a voice from behind. Gong beater. You freeze. The word floats toward you, not shouted but clear. You turn slowly. A palace guard stands in the path, half in shadow. His uniform is neat, bronze buttons dull in the moonlight. You bow immediately. He says nothing else, just studies you for a moment, then nods once and steps aside. You exhale only when he's gone. Encounters like that don't happen often, but when they do, they stick. You'll replay that one nod for the next 5 patrols, wondering if it meant approval or warning. You approach a quieter part of the district now, servants' quarters, kitchens, storage yards. You pass a line of drying linens, pale and swaying like spirits. One sheet has a charcoal sketch drawn into its corner, delicate, like a flower in bloom. You wonder who had time to do that. You check your candle. It's nearly gone, the wick sputtering. You swap it for another stub, fumbling with the flint. It takes 3 tries and a whispered curse, clean of course, but it lights. A soft crack from above makes you look up. A cat perches on the roof, eyes glowing, tail twitching. You nod at it. The cat blinks once, turns and vanishes like it was never there. You keep walking. There's an ache in your lower back now, and your knees click like drumsticks. Your body's keeping time even when you don't want it to. You reach your final palace checkpoint near a lacquered gate. You strike once more, perfectly measured. Then you retreat, moving down into the alleys again, where the walls are lower and the smells are stronger. You're heading back into the city's gut. The Imperial Zone is behind you. The smell of jasmine and pine gives way to coal smoke and fish guts. But for a brief stretch of time you are part of something grand, even if only at the edges. The streets swell with scents now, thick and jumbled like a stew left too long over fire. You move into the merchant district, your favourite part, depending on the wind. It starts with fermented tofu, a whiff so strong it nearly lifts your eyebrows off your face. Next comes star anise and pepper oil from a nearby spice vendor, lingering stubbornly even though the shop's long since shuttered. A faint trace of sandalwood drifts down from a shrine tucked between 2 buildings. And then, something less dignified. The smell of wet rattan mats and spoiled radish. The olfactory experience here could best be described as spiritual confusion. You strike the gong again, letting it ring through the narrow corridor of trade stalls and awnings. Above you, silks flutter like sleeping birds, left hanging overnight by a vendor too lazy, or too trusting, to bring them in. The night market has mostly wound down, but a few stubborn vendors linger in corners, lanterns casting amber halos around piles of steaming buns and glistening skewers. You spot one cart still lit, the steam rising from a clay pot making the vendor look like he's emerging from fog. Your stomach growls so hard it could legally be considered a protest. The vendor sees you and lifts a bun in offering. You hesitate. You know this man. Master Wei, a widow with 3 sons and a habit of selling expired delicacies. The bun's probably been reheated 4 times, but it's warm and free. You take it with a nod. He grins. For the one who never sleeps, you bite in. It's not fresh, it's not good, but it's hot. And for a moment that's everything. You thank him with a quiet gong tap and a salute. He bows deeply, almost theatrically, probably trying to impress a nearby butcher's daughter who isn't paying attention. You pass under a row of hanging paper talismans, each scrawled with blessings for wealth, fertility, and, your favourite, absence of unexpected mildew. Some charms flutter loose, tangled in twine and sticky rice paste, barely holding on. You think of yourself. Ahead, the canal's edge creeps back into view. You approach one of the older bridges, its wood warped from decades of rain and boots. The water below is dark, reflecting a few slivered stars. You stop in the middle and strike the gong. The sound jumps from the surface, softer now. Everything feels muted here, like the city itself is holding its breath. A scholar once told you sound behaves differently over water, that the density of the air shifts its texture. You didn't know air had texture until then, but now, standing here, you get it. The tone your gong makes here is gentler, like a sigh more than a signal. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks. A deep, lone bark, then silence. You keep walking. You turn onto Brickmaker Street, named for the kiln at its end, long abandoned. This is one of the noisier stretches, even at night. You pass a family butchering a pig by lantern light, quietly but not discreetly. It's not illegal, but they don't exactly want to explain themselves either. You nod. They nod. You both keep your secrets. A burst of clanging metal erupts from behind a closed door. You flinch, mallet raised, then realise it's just a blacksmith working late. Unusual, but not suspicious. You recognise the rhythm. He's forging horseshoes, probably for a last-minute courier run. And then there are the bells. Not yours? Not temple bells either, but wind chimes, hundreds of them. A small courtyard ahead is famous for it. An eccentric merchant once installed dozens of iron and porcelain chimes around his home to ward off bad luck. Now, the slightest breeze sets them into motion, creating a discordant harmony that's both beautiful and maddening. You pause there for a moment, letting the sound wash over you. You strike your gong once, and the tones ripple through the chimes, each answering in their own voice. For a moment, it sounds like 1,000 tiny monks chanting back at you. Historians still argue whether soundscapes in Ming cities were intentionally curated, if vendors and officials saw sonic identity as a part of civic pride, or whether it was all just chaotic improvisation. Judging from the chime symphony surrounding you, it's probably both. You duck past a stall hung with strips of cured meat and dried squid. One of them brushes your face. You recoil, taste regret. The weather is shifting again. The air's turning damp. You glance at the sky. Clouds thickening. Rain maybe, or just heavy dew. Either way, your boots will be soaked by the time this is over. You light your last candle stub. It flickers, uncertain, before holding. You hope it lasts another 2 checkpoints. You approach a cluster of night performers, silent now, their painted faces pale under lamplight, as they snooze against props and drums. Their show ended hours ago, but their masks are still propped on sticks watching you. One grins far too wide. You remember one night a month back when a drunken official mistook you for a street performer and threw a copper coin at your feet. You bowed. He laughed. You bought a pickled plum with it. Fair trade. At the next street corner you spot a curious sign, a piece of parchment pinned to a post with crimson string. It reads, "Seen, pale man in robes, walking backward through steam." You raise an eyebrow. Night watch boards often host strange messages. Warnings, sightings, or just art projects disguised as paranoia. You leave it there. Whatever that's about, you hope it's not contagious. You pass by a small temple to the god of commerce. Someone's left 3 dumplings on the steps and a note that simply says invest wisely. You mentally file that under practical theology. Your route bends again, deeper into the labyrinth of artisan lanes. You catch the scent of lacquer, of paint, of ink freshly ground. A calligrapher's studio still glows from within, candlelight flickering across rice paper, his brush rising and falling like breath. You slow your pace, appreciating the calm in his motions. He doesn't see you, but you imagine he hears the gong when you strike it next. You like to think it helps him keep his rhythm. The smells fade again now, replaced by coal smoke and something slightly sulphurous. You're nearing the edge of the city's industrial zone, but that's for the next leg. You stop at a rain barrel, dip your hand in and splash your face. The water is icy, but it shocks your eyes open. You whisper it now, the ritual line, "All's well." You strike the gong and keep walking. The wind hits harder now, sharp and wet with the coming drizzle. It curls around your ankles like a jealous cat, sneaks under your collar, and fingers the seams of your coat with icy interest. You're entering the weather's territory now, and the weather doesn't care about your candle, your aching feet, or the fact that you've already walked 10,000 steps tonight. You pull your coat tighter, not that it helps. The lining gave out weeks ago, and the patch over your left shoulder keeps unsewing itself like a passive-aggressive threat. Still, it's what you've got. You're not paid in silks. Your candle sputters at the first drop of rain. You shield it with both hands and duck under a sloping tiled roof. The tile drips rhythmically, plink, 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 onto the back of your boot. You watch as the tiny flame stabilizes, just barely. You think, not for the first time, about building a lantern hood. Old Man Bay, the Tinkatu district's over, once made one from an oil flask and half a wok. It worked until he set his own eyebrow on fire. He's still proud of it. You tap the gong again. Not too loud. The rain is starting to fill the air with its own percussion. A steady hiss now, not yet heavy but persistent. The sound muffles your steps, dulls your echo. It's like walking through fabric. This section of the city is quieter. Not because the people are asleep, though they are, but because the buildings are taller, tighter, and packed with storage. These are warehouse blocks, brick and beam, little life. A place where barrels outnumber people 5 to 1. You're not here to be admired. You're here because the schedule says you are. You reach for your hood and tug it forward, the fabric catching on the edge of your hat pin. You try to look composed. You probably look like a wet dumpling with legs. The rain grows bolder, fat drops slapping the stone. You strike the gong again, tongue, and this time the sound goes nowhere. It falls flat, swallowed by water and walls. You mutter the phrase out of habit. Fourth watch, all's well. Not entirely true. You're wet. Your toes are pruning, and the bottom hem of your coat now weighs as much as your gong. Still, you're vertical. You're moving. You count that as a win. You pass a shrine to the rain god, a tiny alcove where someone's tied green ribbons and set out a bowl of water. It's overflowing now. You wonder if that means the prayer worked too well. Historians still argue whether local deities were regionally recognised in patrol maps. Some believe the watch routes deliberately bent past minor temples, giving respect where it was due. Others think the routes just followed where it was driest. You strike again, this time under an eave. The sound is cleaner here, less soaked. You allow yourself the small satisfaction of an unmuted note. Ahead, someone's propped an umbrella between two barrels, a makeshift shelter. You step under it and sigh. A small miracle. Inside it smells like fish and something uncomfortably close to feet, but at least it's dry. You take a moment to check your supplies. The pouch is damp, the coin's sticky, your mallet's grip is swelling from moisture. You pull it tight against the gong strap and whisper to it like a companion. "Don't warp on me tonight." You once knew a man whose gong split in half during a storm, said it sounded like the sky cracking. He wasn't even reprimanded, the captain just said, "Get another," and mop the alley. You move on, entering the textile quarter. The cloth shops are locked up, but bolts of silk and hemp still hang in the upper rafters, drying, or getting wetter now. One shop has a cloth awning painted with dragons in blue and gold. The rain makes the dragons ripple like they're swimming. A fringe belief among some tailors is that dragons stitched by candlelight are luckier than those made during daylight. You wonder if they'd consider your nightly pacing lucky, or just damp. The puddles are now ankle-deep in places. You navigate them with practiced hops and sideways steps, your footfalls sloshing. Somewhere behind you, a roof tile slips and shatters. You don't turn around. You never turn around at night if you can help it. You strike the gong again, a little softer this time, wary of drawing attention. You pass an alley infamous for its gusts. It acts like a funnel, sucking in wind and turning it into howls. You brace yourself, tighten everything that can be tightened, and enter. Sure enough, the wind hits you like a slap. Your coat flaps wildly. You lower your head and push through. Midway, your hat lifts slightly. You slap it down just in time. It's a ridiculous struggle, but you've been through worse, like the time you lost your sandal in a flood drain and had to finish your route with 1 foot bare and 1 foot furious. You make it out of the alley with your dignity mostly intact. You stop under a windowsill, panting, and give a wry chuckle. The wind doesn't care. It goes on spinning. You're soaked now, fully committed to the discomfort. Your fingers are wrinkled. Your socks, if they can still be called that, are auditioning for sea sponge rolls. And yet, you strike again. Thong. The sound hits a corrugated metal roof and ricochets back at you like applause. You smile, teeth chattering. You move into a courtyard near the charcoal vendor's lane. The smell of burnt wood is rich, almost cosy, if not for the damp seeping into everything. You spot the silhouettes of stacked firewood. Tarped, but not well. The rain is having its way. You knock again. The gong rings dull now, moisture settling in. You wince. You adjust the mallet, strike once more, cleaner, satisfied. There's a shape up ahead. Someone huddled near a brazier, face hidden under a cloak. You slow down. No sudden moves, just steady pacing. They don't look up, just warm their hands. You pass by and they raise 2 fingers in silent greeting. You nod. It's another watchman, or a beggar, or something else. You don't ask. Rain brings out all kinds. You trudge on, puddles growing deeper. The city too seems to sigh under the weight of the storm. Roofs groan. A shutter bangs. A rooster crows prematurely, confused by thunder. There's no real sunrise for you, not yet. Just a subtle thinning of the darkness that makes shadows turn from black to blue, and lantern light feel more desperate. You're soaked through, of course, and your fingers move like twigs in cold syrup. But there's a worse pain than wet toes or frozen elbows. Hierarchy. That's what you're dealing with now. You've made your way back toward the watchman's rest yard, a cramped courtyard behind a minor administrative post that pretends to be important because someone's uncle once held a scroll there. It's your designated halfway checkpoint, an unofficial zone where the night patrol routes crisscross, and where, if you're lucky, you can huddle for 10 minutes and pretend you've never heard the word Gong. You approach, striking your mallet softly against the rim. The response isn't another echo, but a throat being cleared, loudly, dramatically. Senior gong beater Wu. You spot him immediately. His silhouette stiff-backed on the dry stool beneath the single intact awning. His gong hangs perfectly polished, his coat lined with the rabbit fur, his socks rumoured to be made of literal clouds. He's sipping what is absolutely not regulation tea from a lacquered cup and giving you that look. The look that says, "I noticed you were late. I've been waiting to be superior about it." You bow because technically, Wu's ranked above you. Not because he's smarter or stronger or more efficient, but because he's older, and once spotted a thief before anyone else did. That was 12 years ago. He's still riding that victory like a war hero. "Wet tonight," he says, smiling with all the warmth of a whetstone. You nod. "River tried to hire me." He doesn't laugh, but Dung, seated on the stone step nearby, snorts. Wu sips again. "I heard your echo near the kiln district. Seemed uneven." You clench your jaw, offering a polite grunt. It was the rain, the angles, the cursed air. Everyone knows echoes don't behave in weather like this. Still, this is the game. Wu watches, Wu judges. Wu steals the best shift beds, the driest benches, the freshest night pairs left at checkpoints by kindly old ladies. He once claimed 3 dumplings from a widow because her note read, "To the vigilant one," and he declared he was clearly the most vigilant, and somehow, he always manages to look dry. You glance at the others. Dung is wringing out his sash. Little Bao, the youngest patrol, is curled under a thatched overhang, chewing a piece of fried dough so stale it might double as insulation. His gong is cracked. His candle is gone. His spirit. Currently vacationing somewhere warmer. You sit near the edge of the stone step, not under the awning. You're not senior enough for that. Lost a boot sole, Dung mutters, holding up his foot. Stepped on a nail, told the nail to find someone else to bother. Didn't listen. You all chuckle just a little. It's camaraderie born of sleep deprivation and shared misery. You've all seen the same shadows, heard the same whispered arguments behind shuttered windows. You've all been mistaken for ghosts. One time, someone threw rice at you. Ghost again? You asked Dung. Yup, 3rd time this month. Bao speaks up, voice half muffled by dough. You ever get mistaken for a beggar? You raise your hand. Ever get mistaken for a constable? Nobody raises a hand. You all sigh. Then, from across the courtyard, a sudden shriek. You all jump. A cat bolts out from a pile of firewood, yowling like it's seen the face of the moon goddess herself. Wu barely blinks. Probably smelled Bao's socks, he murmurs. You smile in spite of yourself. Then comes the shift update, passed from the adjacent post via a soaked apprentice, who mutters it under his breath while staring at the ground. You all listen carefully. There's been a robbery near the coin scales, a silk theft in the south lane, and, Wu perks up at this, a case of missing chickens near the granary. He makes a note, already plotting how to spin the discovery of a rogue chicken into another scroll-worthy victory. All right, he says, rising like a solemn statue with tea breath. Let's make our presence known. Except for those of us whose shift continues west, he adds, turning directly to you. You groan inwardly. The western sector, the longest stretch, fewer people, more shadows, and the part with the leaning bell tower that never fails to creak like it's about to collapse on you. You sling your gong back over your shoulder. The strap bites harder now. You're not imagining it. This thing gains weight the longer you wear it. You pass Bao, who offers you the last third of his brick dough. You decline politely. Not worth the dental damage. Back into the city. Again. Your first step in this next leg feels different. Not quite heavier, just more inevitable. You pass under another arch. A bat flutters overhead, disturbed by the motion. You instinctively duck. The west stretch winds past the carpenter's hall, where the scent of varnish still lingers. Then the ropemaker's alley, where dozens of coils hang from hooks like sleeping snakes. You strike the gong again, and in this quieter zone it echoes back beautifully. The kind of resonance that makes you forget for a moment that your socks are actively trying to dissolve. You pass a row of homes marked with magistrate wax seals, evidence of ongoing disputes, likely about property lines, noise, or someone's duck being too loud. You don't read the details, you just move on. Then, the tower. It leans, slightly, like it's trying to hear what you're doing. Built a century ago, never maintained properly. The bell at the top hasn't rung in decades, but it still moves in the wind. You glance up as you pass. Tonight it's swinging, just a little. You mutter, "Not tonight," and pick up the pace. A shape darts across the road. You freeze. It's small, too fast for a person, too smooth for a rat. You squint. It's a monkey, a literal monkey, wearing what appears to be a tiny vest. You blink. It vanishes over a wall. You say nothing. Dung once told you, when in doubt, blame nobles and move on. You don't speak of the things you see. Not really. Not in detail. You and the other gong beaters, you keep a quiet catalogue of moments, tucked between footsteps and candle flickers. Things you witnessed but didn't report because reporting them wouldn't change anything. Might even make things worse. The monkey in the vest. You'll file that under noble eccentricities and tell Dung if he buys you vinegar peanuts. But the other things, the serious things, those stay locked behind your eyes. Because what you've seen, the real things, don't want to be remembered. You're back in the narrow canal district now. The water here is sluggish and dark, just enough moonlight to see the thin sheen of oil gliding along the top like an unwanted blessing. You strike your gong softly, letting the sound roll over the surface. It comes back twisted, warped by the humidity. There's movement up ahead, a pair of shadows passing a lantern back and forth in a private courtyard. You freeze. Shouldn't be anyone out this late. Not here. The flame inside the lantern dims and flares. You hear low voices, too far to make out words, but the tone is tense. Sharp, clipped syllables. Not lovers' whispers, business, or secrets. You back away a step and strike your gong again, intentionally loud. The sound cuts through the night like a drawn blade. The lantern vanishes instantly. You don't wait for whatever comes next. You keep walking. You learned early in this job that being predictable is safer than being brave. Your sound tells them where you are. That's all they need to know. Historians still argue whether the city's night watch routes were deliberately published to the public or leaked over time. Some say it was strategic transparency, others call it bureaucratic laziness. Either way, your pattern is known to people who use it well and those who use it better. You pass a closed herbalist's shop. The painted sign sways on a chain, creaking as the wind picks up. There's a smear of something dark on the stone just outside the door. Could be spilled medicine, could be something else. You don't stop to find out. You reach the bridge of returning lanterns. It's a small arch thing, more symbolic than functional. People cross it on festivals, lighting candles and releasing them into the canal. Tonight it's deserted. You strike the gong again and step slowly over the arch. As you reach the middle, you glance down, and you see it. Not a reflection. A robe, floating in the water. Silk, pale green, barely visible beneath the oily surface. No movement, no thrashing, no sound. You stop. You've seen drowned rats. A drowned pig once. Never a robe this fine. You don't look closer. You don't fish it out. You don't yell for help. You strike the gong again, and you keep walking. The canal bends around a shadowed warehouse. You remember hearing once that this building stored fireworks, or maybe dried fish, or maybe both, which would explain the incident 2 years ago. Either way, it's abandoned now. Or so they say. Tonight, a light flickers behind one boarded window. You turn your head, keep your pace even. You count your steps. You hum softly. You don't break rhythm. You turn the next corner. And there she is, a woman standing still in the alley, face hidden beneath a wide straw hat, sleeves hanging low and unmoving. Her feet are bare. No sound, no breath. You stop short, heart tripping over itself. She doesn't react, doesn't speak, doesn't move. You force your hand to raise the mallet. You strike the gong. She vanishes, just gone. Not turned, not walked, gone. You stand there, staring at empty air. Maybe she turned a corner. Maybe it was a trick of the rain. Maybe your brain, desperate for sleep, is finally creating its own horror stories. You breathe out. The air fogs in front of you. You turn down lantern-extinguished street, its lamps long shattered by weather and disrepair. You know this path well. The buildings lean together like gossiping elders. The walls here are close. The silence is tighter. And then a door opens ahead. Just a crack. Inside, candlelight. A figure steps into the opening. A man, robed, hunched slightly. You can't see his face. Just a glint of something metallic in his hand. Maybe a cup. Maybe a knife. He sees you. You see him. He doesn't speak. You strike your gong. He nods once and closes the door. You want to believe it was a coincidence, that he just stepped out to check the weather, maybe pee off the porch like some do, but you know better. You've seen the signs, the quiet exchanges, the sudden disappearances, the hush that falls over certain homes as you approach. Some people have business that lives only in the dark. You walk on. You wonder how much of this will stay with you in the morning. How much you'll remember and how much you'll pretend not to. How many times you'll lie to yourself, say you must have imagined it, that it was nothing, that the robe was just laundry and the woman was just fast. The night watch doesn't write reports. Not like the magistrates. Your ledger is in your bones. You pass a shuttered wine shop. The painted grapevine on the wall has faded into ghostly curls. A rat runs across your path, squealing like it's late for something. You nod to it. You understand. You strike your gong again. It sounds tired now. So do you. You pass one final corner before looping toward the east gate. A small alcove shelters a sleeping beggar wrapped in a mat of stitched straw. His breathing is soft, steady. You envy him. He doesn't stir as you walk by. The night is thinning now. Light hasn't come yet, but the edges of the sky hint at grey. You feel it more than you see it. The great turning of the world preparing to wake. You strike the gong again just once more this hour. It rings and fades. The city is still mostly asleep, but something has shifted. You feel it in the wind, lighter now, tinged with the smell of steamed rice and smoke. The night isn't gone yet, but it's yielding. You can hear it in the roosters, just starting to crow in scattered bursts like insecure musicians trying out their first notes. This is the final stretch of your shift, the slow tapering, the long exhale. You reach the east gate as its first squeaky hinge groans into motion. A gatekeeper yawns his way into consciousness, his breath clouding in front of him as he unlatches the lock with the enthusiasm of a man who deeply regrets agreeing to this post. He gives you a sleepy nod. You nod back. Neither of you says a word. You don't need to. You've seen each other's worst mornings. You strike the gong one more time. Fifth watch, you murmur. All's well. Not true. Not entirely. But closer to true than it was a few hours ago. The final circuit is mostly ceremonial now. You're no longer announcing time for sleepers. You're heralding the return of day. Even if no one hears you. Even if no one cares. You walk the final blocks like a ghost, reminding the city it still exists. You pass a butcher sweeping out the bones of yesterday, a mother nursing her baby by firelight, a stable hand yawning into the flank of a horse. You don't stop. You just keep walking one step after another, your gong quieter now, as if it too is winding down. You cross back into the northern quarter where the smells shift again. Less smoke, more starch, freshly boiled millet, a hint of ginger. You pass a row of food stalls being assembled piece by piece, benches set out, woks lit, aprons tied. Long night, a vendor calls without turning. You grunt. It's all you've got left. A few minutes later you reach the last checkpoint. It's a simple courtyard with a cracked incense bowl and a bench worn into the shape of every watchman's backside for the past 20 years. You sit, slowly. With more noise than you'd like to admit. Your legs stretch out in front of you. You unfasten the gong and place it on the stone beside you like an offering. The straps left a red mark across your shoulder. You flex your hand, fingers numb. This is the moment you allow yourself to feel it all. The weight, the damp, the fatigue lodged behind your eyes like sand. You pull a strip of dried pear from your pouch and chew slowly. It's sour. You don't care. From down the alley comes a group of junior watchmen, fresh-faced and yawning, preparing to take over for the early morning patrol. One of them, no older than 17, sees you and straightens his spine like a soldier. "Senior gong beater," he says. You snort. You're not that senior, but to him, anyone who's survived more than 1 year is basically a myth. He gives you a small bow. You nod, motioning to the empty bench. He doesn't take it. They never do. Not yet. He has to earn that seat. The young patrol moves on. You watch them disappear around the corner. Their gongs gleam. Their coats are still mostly dry. One of them is humming a tune. You wonder how long that'll last. You check your candle stub. Burnt to nothing. You toss it in the gutter. The wax clings to your glove like the last remnants of the night. You close your eyes just for a second, leaning your head against the cool stone wall. And there it is. That whisper of doubt. The one that always comes at the end. What does it matter? Does anyone know you walked all night to make sure strangers could sleep without fear? That you called the hours like a heartbeat? That you navigated secrets and shadows without ever being seen? You remember a phrase you heard once, etched into a temple bell. The sound rings longer than the ringer. You're not here to be remembered. You're here so others don't have to think about what happens while they dream. Your shift's done. You rise slowly, every joint complaining. You sling the gong back over your shoulder. One last time. You shuffle toward the dormitory, where the walls are thin, the beds are damp, and the pillow smells faintly of smoke and vinegar. But it's yours. As you reach the door, you glance up at the sky. It's no longer dark, it's blue. Soft and early and pale, but blue. You made it. One more night behind you. One more sound in the city's memory. And now, friend, as the first light of morning stretches across the tiled roofs of Beijing, and the final echo of your gong fades into soft daylight, you can let the weight go. You feel it leaving your shoulders, that slow ache of responsibility. You've done your job, you've walked the silence, you've watched while no one watched you. And that, in its quiet way, is something extraordinary. The air is warmer now, gently rising against your skin like a calm tide. The streets are no longer yours, but that's all right. You've passed them back, safe and whole, to the waking world. You step away like a ghost at sunrise, leaving only footprints behind. Faint ones, soon to be washed away by time and foot traffic and memory. But you remember. You remember the scent of incense in the dark, the crunch of turnips between laughs, the way sound bends over water. You remember the shiver when the air turned, and the stillness when the city held its breath. You remember the soft victory of one more shift survived, and as you drift now into your own well-earned sleep, you carry those moments with you, not as burdens, but as quiet marks of the life you've lived between the stars and the stone. So breathe deep, close your eyes, and let yourself rest, just as the world begins to stir. The city is waking, but you sleep.